The top business stories live from Sky News City Studio. Growth the top priority. The Labour leader sets out his plan for the economy. We'll find out what business made of his big speech in Liverpool. Several major airlines suspend flights out of Israel as Hamas continues its assault from Gaza. Strong results for the European hotel chain Easy Hotel as more people seek affordable stays. Plus, the pop legend joining a star lineup to help musicians get paid for their work through the power of technology. Good afternoon. This is Business Live with me, Ian King. Well, it was a somewhat rocky start to Sir Keir Starmer's headline speech at the party conference this afternoon. After being covered in glitter by a protester, the Labour leader insisted his party would fight the next election on economic growth. There would have been plenty of business leaders listening to Sir Keir's speech, but did it fill them with confidence? Well, joining me now from the conference in Liverpool is the founding partner of Woburn Partners, Heather Vernon. She's a former Labour advisor who now helps business leaders engage with the shadow cabinet. Heather, welcome to you. I mean, apart from the chap with the glitter, is this speech really going to linger long in the memory?
I think, actually, the chap with the glitter is a good example of a blessing in disguise, in a way, for Keir Starmer, if you want to be an optimist. The reason this speech may not stick in the mind as much as it might have done is that the Middle East situation has actually meant that it's been very hard for Labour to get the cut-through they might have expected with this conference. And actually, having this protest at the start of the speech is probably a way he's going to get more airtime. If I was still working for the Labour Party, I would have said to them, hold back a few things that might have made this speech really eye-catching and quite new and different from what we've heard before from Labour. But I would have expected that, given the horrific situation in the Middle East, they will have held some of that back. That said, I do think it was a very, very competent and coherent speech. I think that certainly the business community who are at this conference will have heard that and felt nothing very shocking or disturbing for them. And it's been a good week, I think, for Keir Starmer ultimately, if a low-key one media-wise.
I mean, it's an interesting point you make there. I mean, it has been a conference quite light on policy announcements. So one thing they have nailed their colours to the mast on is building 1.5 million new homes over a 5-year parliament. Is that a target they might live to regret setting?
I think the housing crisis is there's a reason that Keir and team are talking about this so much. I think it was the first announcement of conference week, wasn't it? It was the first thing that was talked about, was planning and housing, and it's been a theme throughout. And I think that's because it's a desperate situation, and from an electoral perspective, it's something that not only affects generations of people who are struggling to own their own home or pay their rents, but actually that intergenerational sympathy hits parents and hits grandparents in a way that it really has never done before. So I think that they are thinking very carefully about how to execute on what they're suggesting in a way that perhaps previous Labour administration have been criticised for not doing. I think that when they say a figure like this, they mean it, and I think that the government is actually struggling themselves to be credible on numbers and targets in a way that might not be as much of a problem for Labour as it might otherwise.
Heather, I mean, obviously Labour... Oh, your earpiece has fallen out. Is there someone that can give her a hand there?
Sorry, just having a quick mic issue.
OK, hopefully someone will give you a hand with your earpiece there. Can you hear me, Heather? There we go.
Thanks.
Sorry, we will get that back. There we go, brilliant.
Sorry about that, Ian.
Well done. No, that's fantastic.
Still there?
Andy coming to the rescue there.
Oh, great.
No, Heather, I was going to ask you, I mean, Labour's obviously keen to see more investment, particularly from the private sector. One of the things that a lot of people are looking for is whether they do away with this pledge to tax private equity profits at 45% rather than 28%. Is that coming, do you think?
So I think that's a really good example of where tax is something that Labour are often criticised by the business community for wanting too much of, and for finding tax as a solution to all of their problems. That private equity tax that you mention is probably one of the very few tax policies that they're talking about. I mean, you heard Rachel Reeves talk a lot this week and in her speech about how we do have the highest tax burden in a very long time, and we don't want that. We they're refusing to commit on things like capital gains tax, on wealth tax, on mansion tax, all of these different tax areas that it's almost a question of how are you going to pay for some of the things that you're going to be paying for, but they want to be very careful on that. So I'm afraid that private equity tax may be something that's one of the lower profile and less concerning to people around the country.
OK, Heather, got to leave it there. Appreciate you joining me today. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Some other business news stories for you now. And the Bank of England reiterated today that many households are yet to feel the full impact of its 14 interest rate rises since the end of 2021. The bank's Financial Policy Committee also warned that greater reliance on credit cards could lead to greater debt vulnerability for households in the near term. But the FPC added that Britain's banking system remains strong and said UK business had shown itself resilient to higher interest rates. It also revealed that its stress tests next year on the banking sector will not include bank-by-bank results, as it carries out a review of its stress testing procedures. Several international airlines have suspended direct flights from Israel to the UK as fighting continues between Israeli forces and Hamas. Virgin Atlantic is now operating one flight to and from Tel Aviv a day rather than two, while British Airways continues to operate one round trip. EasyJet, Ryanair, Wizz Air, as well as Air France, Lufthansa and Emirates have all suspended flights to the UK from Israel. The UK's economy will grow by just 0.6% next year, according to the latest forecast from the International Monetary Fund. That would represent the weakest growth in the G7 group of leading industrialised economies, but critics argue the forecast should be taken with a pinch of salt, as it's based on an expectation that the Bank of England will raise interest rates to 6%, while financial markets are betting the bank rate has already peaked at 5.25%. The electrical goods retailer Currys said today it's received a number of offers for Kotsovolos, its business in Greece and Cyprus. Currys launched a strategic review of the business, which is a market leader in its countries, in June of this year. It said it and its advisors were now evaluating the offers. Well, Kotsovolos, which was founded in 1950, has 2,600 employees working in its online operations and across 93 stores. Currys have risen their shares by 5.75% on that news. Now, the budget hotel chain Easy Hotel claimed today its sales during the first 6 months of the year were more than double those in the same period as last year. The company, which now has 16 franchised hotels and 26 owned and leased hotels, also announced plans to more than double its portfolio by 2026. Joining me now is Karim Malik, Chief Executive of Easy Hotel. Karim, welcome to you. Is this organic growth, or is this down to the fact that you're putting on more capacity?
Well, both actually. We have ambitious development plans, and we want, as you said, to double the portfolio in the next years. And we've acquired, for instance, a company in the Benelux last year, and we've also opened new hotels in Dublin and in Paris and in Madrid recently. So that's for the growth part. And also, there's been we've had high success in all our different markets and gaining market share, and therefore increasing our revenue per room.
And I mean, you say you've doubled your revenues during the period, but there's nothing about profitability. Are you actually trading profitably now?
Yes, we are. We've increased profitability, and that comes down to several factors. If I want just to cite just one factor, is that there's an increasing proportion of our customers that book direct on our site, easyhotel.com, and therefore we use less intermediaries and have therefore less commission. So yes, profitability is on the rise.
That's sort of pre-tax level. That's not just cash flow positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are your opening plans for the next 12 months then?
So we are currently looking at different opportunities, and there are already buildings that are being built as I speak in Marseille, for instance, in France, and we're also opening a lot of rooms in Spain, and we have buildings coming up in Valencia and a hotel in Alicante, for instance.
And what are you seeing in terms of opening costs? Are inflationary pressures starting to abate?
Well, the nice point about Easy Hotel is that we have a very simple model. We, after all, are Easy Hotel, and our value proposition for customers is a super deal, super value, and super low carbon. But we also try to pass on all the savings that we're making on our business models to our customers and rely on a very lean business model. And actually, the operational costs are not a big proportion of our profit and loss statement, and therefore inflation doesn't really have that much of an impact on our cost base.
You mentioned some of the international locations you're looking at. There are still quite a few places here in the UK where you're not represented. Nottingham, Bristol, Southampton. Are those all targets for the near future?
Absolutely, and I would add York to that, for instance. We're very much looking into new destinations in the UK, and we've strengthened our development team recently to make sure that we actually achieve that goal.
All right, Karim, good to see you again this afternoon. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Well, one of the fastest growing music technology companies has added a rather famous star to its lineup of financial backers. Sir Elton John has joined Sir Paul McCartney and ABBA's Bjorn Ulvaeus as an investor in Ordo, which looks to use technology to help artists receive fairer royalty payments. Estimates suggest artists lose out on as much as $3 billion globally in unaccounted royalties each year. The latest funding round takes the total raised by Ordo since its launch to $22 million. Well, earlier I spoke to the company's founder, the former musician Ryan Edwards. I began by asking him how the system works.
So it's a new technology that we've designed and developed everything here in the UK. So you'll know technologies like Shazam, where you use your mobile phone to do it. We've actually taken it to the next level, where we don't store a recording, we don't transmit any audio, we actually do everything in real time on device, and it gives us an even higher accuracy level as well.
And all your manufacturing's done here in the UK?
It is, yeah, everything is done. We've designed, developed and continue to manufacture everything here as well.
That must have been a huge challenge, though, when you were starting out.
Yeah, I guess as a business that's a few years old, COVID has certainly played a role in that, being able to not physically get to the manufacturing plant and do it, but we have components coming from all over the world, and then everything gets put together, built and shipped back out around the world for where we're live at the moment, yeah.
Now, the interesting thing is you don't have a tech background. You're a drummer in a rock band.
I was a long time ago. I know your viewers may think like to think I look 21 now, but yeah, nearly 20 years ago I was a drummer in a band. We were called The Lions, and we had a top 10 UK single. And I've spent most of my career working in data in my professional career, and just saw this intersection where there was a challenge in music where they weren't able to obtain all the data from the real world, from gyms and pubs and clubs and restaurants and even retail, to pull all of this in and actually get the right money to the right artist at the right time.
But was there a eureka moment for you? When did you realise this?
Yeah, so my eureka moment, I was in a department store on Oxford Street a few years ago, and my wife and I heard my song playing, and of course she turned to me and said, "Well, how much are you being paid for this?" And I said, "Oh, it's a few pennies. Forget that very expensive handbag you're looking at." and off I went, researching and trying to figure out what the correlation was, and what I found is a $55 billion royalty industry, and forums and pages and artists everywhere saying, how does it work? It doesn't appear to be working, or it's not attributed right, because it's all built on legacy and old systems. So that's where technology like ours are bringing it forward and making it more accurate every day.
I mean, you've got buy-in from PRS for music. What about rights management organisations around the world?
Yeah, so we're live in 8 markets around the world, so as far afield as Australia, and of course here back with PRS and the wonderful work that they do as well. And recent investment means we can grow and we can take this solution to quite literally every country.
So the money that you've raised in this funding round, that is going to be largely deployed on international expansion?
International growth, yeah. So, most of the team is here in the UK. We have a few dotted around the world at the moment, but more and more markets are calling for what we're doing. So we need to be ready to put those people and actually make it work for the artists as well.
I mean, you've got some glittering names backing you, Bjorn Ulvaeus and
Yep.
Sir Paul McCartney, and now Elton John.
Yeah, so, somebody joked this morning, they said you're trying to put together a supergroup. So maybe as a drummer we could start something with with the three of them. That'd be beyond a dream of just the business. But yeah, and I think they have all seen the problem firsthand, and that's why they've been so supportive, for all the people that they've grown with, but of course they all support future generations as well. So it's great to have their backing.
But how did they get wind of what you were doing?
So we've grown, we've delivered bit by bit. We've grown, partnerships with people like PRS and APA in Australia and other ones around the world. The whispers and the music industry is relatively small as well. So yeah, when you receive those emails in saying, hey, we're on this person's team and we're interested to first of all learn about what you're doing, and then as you build that relationship and they say, well, actually, how can we help? And you say, well, we're trying to grow, and they offer to invest. It's quite a special moment.
How big do you think the market is in terms of the royalties that you can garner for people who aren't collecting them just now?
So right now globally, it's about $55 billion and it's growing expansively. And what's fascinating is the challenge that we're seeing is quite literally the same in every market in the world. So yeah, we think we'll grow that part. You see exporting in these key music markets like the UK is one of the biggest global players in music as well. So hopefully it will drive and it will grow that ecosystem everywhere.
Well, still to come here on Business Live. We'll have a look at how the markets have done this Tuesday afternoon. Don't go away.
I just took a shower above the clouds. You know why? Because this is the Emirates A380. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Well, the day-ahead price of natural gas has risen by 13% this afternoon after the US giant Chevron was asked by Israel's government to close a gas field off the country's northern coast. Meanwhile, a pipeline between Finland and Estonia has also collapsed today amid talk of sabotage. That's the Chevron share price you can see on the screen right now. Natural gas currently trading at 109 pence a therm. That's the highest level for a fortnight. The oil price, meanwhile, is off this afternoon. A barrel of Brent crude will currently cost you $87.31 a barrel. That's down a little under 1% on the session. On the equity markets, well, stocks have benefited from a decline in bond yields after the US Federal Reserve's vice chairman indicated further interest rate rises may not be needed. This is how Europe's ended up. Look at that. What a session. Nearly all of the main indices up by 2% or more, and the DAX very nearly up by 2% as well in Germany. Well, here in London, it's a similar picture. The FTSE 100 has finished up just over 1.75% higher, with the mining heavyweights leading the way. Among the other blue chip gainers stand out, well, the specialty chemicals group Croda has attracted some bargain hunters following yesterday's profit warning related sell-off. Outside the FTSE, the polling and data analytics group YouGov has surged by nearly 24% after its annual profits rose by 63%, while Greencore, the UK's biggest sandwich maker, as you can see, has finished by 22% higher. That's on news that full-year results are going to be better than expected. Over on Wall Street, well, stocks again are higher as Treasury yields continue to fall. Consumer stocks are leading the way after some better-than-expected quarterly earnings from PepsiCo. The S&P 500 is ahead by more than 2.5% since Friday. On the foreign exchange markets, well, the US dollar has slightly eased off on those comments from the Fed's vice chairman. The pound up 1/3 against the greenback. It's off by 1/10 against the euro. Single currency, meanwhile, up nearly 0.5% on the dollar. Well, joining me now is Paris Anand, Chief Investment Officer at Artemis. Paris, great to see you. The layperson will look at these stock movements and think, what's going on? There's plenty of talk of inflation in the air. The Middle East is in flames. Why are equities so strong today?
Well, I think one of the things that you've seen in equity markets today is how much investors are hanging on every statement by central bankers. They're sort of really looking for this point in time where they can start to see policy rates ease. And just the sort of the indication or the hint of that, I think, has played a large part in sort of markets sort of moving higher. But I think, as you rightly say, I mean, when we look out over the medium term, especially given the sort of tragic circumstances that are happening around Israel, that you are seeing a higher probability that actually inflation stays with us for longer. So some of these expectations that people are having in the very short term might be confounded.
Does that mean you're expecting the market to be pretty skittish over coming months? Because obviously, you know, there's a lot of talk about a third wave of inflation coming out of this situation in Israel now.
Absolutely. I expect that markets, you know, on the whole will sort of, you know, tend to be consolidating or going sideways. I don't see the circumstances for in aggregate markets to sort of, you know, take off over the coming quarters. Obviously, there are opportunities in individual names, but I think really this idea of kind of waves or spikes of inflation going forward would really be a central case for us.
Now, one of the big corporate stories over the last 48 hours was the recapitalisation of Metro Bank. Probably didn't get as much as attention as it deserved in view of everything else going on. I mean, you've been thinking more broadly about the banking sector as a result of this.
Yeah, I think the first thing to say is clearly for Metro, it's an interesting story looking at a challenger bank. Obviously, there are elements around its sort of strategy, but it's kind of failed to get the sort of the growth or the traction that it really wants. And one of the things I think that's really interesting about that is really the power of incumbency. So then when you kind of then look more broadly at the kind of the UK banking sector, and we look at some of the incumbents, we look at how they're valued in the market and the kind of the dividend yields are on offer, I think we see quite a lot of value in that part of the market.
Why do some of these banking heavyweights trade at a discount to book value after all this time?
I think there's a number of reasons for it, Ian. I think one is clearly, it's been a sector that has been, quite challenged over recent years. I think the second thing is a lot of nervousness about the outlook for the UK economy and things like the impact on higher rates on mortgages and lending and all of those sorts of things, and on the real economy. But actually, you take a step back and you say, well, actually, they're relatively well capitalised now. They're quite profitable. They've got very healthy dividend yields, and most importantly, the valuations are relatively sort of undemanding. And we're seeing a lot of those companies buying back their own equity. So they at least are kind of standing behind the value in their own shares.
All right, Paris, got to leave it there, I'm afraid. Great to see you as ever. Thanks very much for joining me today.
Thank you.
That's it from me. I'm back again with Business Live tomorrow morning. Our morning edition, of course, at 11:30. In the meantime, do stay tuned. Up next, it's the News Hour with Mark Austin, live from Jerusalem, with all the very latest on what is a fast-moving situation. Do stay tuned for that. See you tomorrow. Cheerio.